So, Elaine, thank you so much for having me in your home to interview about the store.
That's fine.
Would you like to start by just saying your full name and where you were born?
Elaine Josephine Markwell, nee Myers, born at Islington, at Mayfield, sorry, lived at Islington, born at Mayfield in Nurse Whiteman's in Hanbury Street. Yes, on the 18th of December 1939.
And where did you go to school?
Cardiff Primary and Infants over on Macquarie Road at Cardiff. And then in at Newcastle Home Science High it was in those days. It became Newcastle Hunter High, I think. But yeah.
And what was one of your favourite subjects at school?
Probably cooking and sewing were my favourite subjects. Maths was a no-no.
And did you enjoy your time at school?
No, I didn't like school. Not like these academics.
Oh. And so what did you do after you left school?
I went straight, I applied for a job at Jane's Bakery in Hunter Street. And in those days, very few people had the phone, so I don't know how, but I didn't get it anyway. But then my mother got me out of bed just after Christmas. They're advertising for people at the store. They want shop assistants and office staff, and you get in there and put your name down. So I did, and I think the only time I had ever been to the store was they used to have a Christmas function up on the roof at the time of like a bit of a circus type thing. I'd never been in the store other than that, because there was also a Wallsend and Plattsburgh cooperative store that my parents were in down Cardiff. And so anyhow, I went in and I found the place, and the next minute I was back out in Hunter Street. I thought, oh, I'd better go, Mum will shoot me. So I went in, and Mr. Beattie, Reg Beattie, was standing at a reception desk, and he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "I just wanted to put my name down for the stuff." And he said, "So do all those people." And the whole boardroom was full of young ones sitting around the board table, filling in what turned out to be a maths paper, of all things, maths my worst subject. And so he said, "Sit over there." And so I sat and did what I could do, what time I had. And he said, "Right, that's enough. Finish up. All come and stand here and bring your papers to me." And he stood in the doorway, and he'd look at them. He'd say, "You can go. You can go. Stand over there. You can go. You can go." And I was one that stood over there. So there was about 6 or 8 of us. I'm not quite sure how many. And I thought I'd be counter staff. I'd had no thoughts of going into the office. And he said, "I want you all back here at 20 to 9 in the morning." And he said, "You'll have to come in through the staff entrance," and he described where that was. And so I came home, went in the next day, and I was in the docket sorter's office. I wasn't there very long, a couple of months, but during that time, divvy was paid. And I don't know why, but he must have taken a bit of a liking to me or something. And when people had come to get their divvy, if they weren't happy with it, he would have to look at what they thought they should have got and he'd throw a pencil from where he was outside the office over, and it'd land on my desk, and I'd have to go out, and then I'd have to go and get a card with that person's name and number on it for them to look at what they had actually spent and what their dividend was. And I did that the first few days. After that, it sort of petered out that not as many people were coming in. And so I was in the docket sorters for probably 6 months, a bit like that. And then he called me into his office, and I thought, "Oh, what have I done?" And anyhow, they were getting a new machine for the lay-by office, and I was to be trained in the lay-by office. So it was a Sweden machine brought up from Sydney by the person that distributed, and I had about a full day with them, or with him, learning it. But another fellow and I had spent a couple of days writing out all the cards ready for the new system. So I was in that for about 12 months. And then he took me back into the general office, and I worked with a couple of older girls doing all the balancing of the cash receipts and the cash that came through the payments of their accounts. And then after that, he got me to, with another few girls, and we went to the National Cash Register Company and had instructions on how to use the new machines they were going to put into all their new supermarkets, because the store was all counters, you always got served, but it was just in time for supermarkets. And the first one they opened was at Mayfield, And so we had a week's tuition up there at that. And then we were there, and I was to be on the checkout, which I did for about 3 or 4 weeks. And one of the girls in the office lived at Wallsend. We used to laugh about her. She was a senior, but she could never be at the bus stop on time, which meant if she missed Fogg's bus going round to Mayfield, she then had to get a government bus into the store and from the store back out to Mayfield. So she didn't last very long. And she asked to be returned to Newcastle, so I went into the office and worked in there. And I was there from I think I was about 17 and a half, and I stayed there till I was 19, and then they opened a new branch at New Lambton, and they asked me to go over there and help them with the opening day. And then they discovered that the 2 girls that were going to be in the office were only 15, and we used to hand a heck of a lot of money. We always had closed our accounts. It wasn't cycle billing in those days, it was fortnightly, and then we closed the day the BHP got paid. So they'd be lined up outside the shop waiting to pay their accounts. So they asked me to stay. So I stayed there from when I was 19 till I got married at 21. And in those days, they didn't employ married women unless it was essential. Nobody applied for your job. Well, they did. So I left. But while I was away on my honeymoon, the boss at New Lambton, he got in touch with my sister who was working at the store and said, tell Elaine to ring me when she gets back. So I did, and I started doing casual work. I'd work every Friday and some Saturdays at New Lambton till I had my first child. And from then on, I did lots of casual work. I was at Bullaroo for a fortnight. I was called on. Mum always said, I won't mind your kiddies full time, but I will help out if there's something. So she didn't mind minding them for a fortnight or so at a time. But I worked at Wallsend, Charlestown, Belmont. I think I just worked a bit every shop they had. But we used to have a store picnic day, and they'd close all those shops and get a train down to Gosford and have a picnic day. And I did go to one of them. The rest of them I'd duck off. We went to Sydney with quite a few of us, went to Sydney and stayed overnight. And I nearly had to get an affidavit at 17 to be able to go to Sydney and stay overnight from my father. He wasn't real happy about that. But we had a lovely time down there. But I still meet up with 6 of the girls, we're down to 4 now, that I work with at New Lambton about every 3 months for lunch. So we still keep in contact and all the rest of it there. But my days I really enjoyed, and I've only been past twice since it's been pulled down. I hate going past there because it had that many lovely memories and so forth. But I'm now nearly 83, so that's how long ago it is.
So I was going to ask how old you were when you started?
15.
15.
Only about a month after I turned 15, yeah. So.
And for someone that didn't like maths.
Yeah. So I was in the office and doing the docket sorting. We used to get all the dockets that were just used through the day, and we had, in those days, they didn't have a printout for your name and address. They just had a disc with my number was M4414, that was my store number, and all those dockets would come through with Myers, it was in those days, Myers 4414. Well, you'd have to get them and sort them all into numerical. They'd go, first of all, we had big, about 4 or 5 big box things with the alphabet on them, and we'd have to put all the A's in and sort them that way. Then we had to put them in numerical order, and then they'd go up to the machines and be put on the people's accounts and things like that. But yeah.
Just a totally different way of
absolutely, yes. I think back when I was on the checkout, you know how they got the conveyor belt now. We had a big wooden frame thing with 2 handles, and people put their groceries into that, and you would haul it along and get the groceries and push it back, and they'd put some more in, haul that along, because you had to key it in by, and you weren't allowed to look at the keys, you had to know where they were and so forth. You had to ring up every item. And there were some stories about people, the way they'd try and get out of there with not paying.
Yeah.
There was an old man used to come in, and he'd take the label off the T-bone steak and put it on off the dog food and put it on T-bone steak, and he'd go out with his bones or something, because you wouldn't be reading what it was, you were looking for the price. And then there was one lady, when I worked at Mayfield, we got warned about her. She had one of the prams that had the tray underneath. She'd have it filled up and she'd draw attention to the baby, you know, and she'd push out with all the groceries underneath. And there was one man used to come in, he smoked a cigar, so the minute he hit, you knew that he was in the shop, and he'd fill his bag up and then walk along and pass it over and then get it when he walked out. Oh, they had some good tricks.
Cunning, aren't they?
Oh, very.
And so there would have been a lot of paperwork and like archives.
Oh, yes, yes.
And did they have to keep, like you were saying with that person coming back because of the divvy question?
Yeah.
Did you have to?
But years ago, there used to be an air raid shelter across from where the store was, and a lot of their stuff was kept in that. A lot of their old documents and so forth was over in the air raid shelter. So they kept, I don't know how many years they kept them for, but they kept them. So, yeah.
A lot of paperwork.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was such a big organisation.
Oh, it was, yes. Well, as I say, my number was 4,440, and that was just in M, and most of the like the well-known names like the S's and that, they were all up that, so that was a lot of customers who were at the store. Yeah.
And so you mentioned your parents were customers.
Oh yes, they were customers down there, and then they joined the store in there when I started working in there. Yeah.
So were they customers locally here?
Yes, at Mum and Dad lived just down the next block from me, and the store was down. I think it's a framing shop now, isn't it? In there, yeah, framing shop, and I think one of the charities might have had a store on the end of it. Yeah, and that was the old store there. Worked down there too.
And can you describe the activities that happened on the roof? Like you mentioned,
it was like a circus. So I was trying to think this morning whether they did have. I thought, how would they have got them up there? Shetland ponies, but there were clowns and jugglers and all that sort of thing, and it was like a Christmas show for the kids. They had tiered seating up there, and then eventually they put the electrical department built up on top, so it went up there then. Yeah, and that was the end of that.
Other people have mentioned the circus as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't
it?
Like,
well, that was a long while ago because I was probably only about 10, something like that. So that's 70 odd years ago.
And it was before the car park was built next door.
Yeah, the car park was built out there. Yes, there wasn't a car park, it was built later. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there was like a service lift or something.
Yes, I don't know. There must have been for them. And then, of course, when they put the electrical up there, there would have been lift went right up. So it probably went up all the time. I don't know. Can't remember that bit.
Yeah. And a lot of other people we've interviewed also talk about the store windows.
Oh, they were beautiful. Yes, they certainly were, the Christmas window, and they had their own dresses, like they were over near the air raid shelter, their department, and they used to do all the windows, but Christmas was exceptional, but all their windows were lovely. You don't see those now, do you?
No, I know.
No.
Got to go to New York or something.
Yeah, somewhere like that. Yes, miss the old windows. That was the thing we used to do of a Sunday night sometimes, just take the kids in to walk up Hunter Street and look in the windows.
So decorative and...
Yeah, all the shops up the town, the David Jones, well, it used to be Scott's in those days when I was a kid, or young. Scott's and Wynn's was up there, yeah.
Was there much competition between, like, the
I presume there was, but I think why the stores sort of failed, in my opinion, was the younger ones wanted their rebates right there when they bought something. They didn't want to wait 6 months to get a bulk lot at the end, and it sort of went downhill from there, I think, which was sad. Yeah. Oh, divvy day. Oh, they'd be lined up 3 and 4 deep waiting for the doors to open to get in there. Yeah.
And so what do you think it meant to people, or what did they spend the divvy on?
A lot of them would, I think, pay it off their account. If they had a running account, they'd just say, transfer that off my account. Or otherwise, they had lots of bargains and everything on that particular era while the divvy, it used to last, I'd say, about fortnight, 3 weeks, something like that. And they'd have bargains in all the different departments. And there was a heck of a lot of departments in that shop. Yeah.
It was quite a unique model, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, yes, absolutely.
Actually, the clients, customers were members of
yes, and it was very rare that you'd go in there that you wouldn't meet somebody you knew that was also in there shopping, So, yeah.
Do you know how long your parents shopped, or how long the one here it was?
The one that was in Cardiff, that was Wall's End and Plattsburgh, well, the store bought it out and it became the Newcastle store. I suppose, I don't think it went for that much longer after I started working in at the store in town. And it went because I know I filled in for a girl one time. She wanted to transfer from Mayfield out to Cardiff when it became the store, and they wouldn't let her go between Christmas and New Year because they didn't want to try and get staff then. So she got me to go down, so I worked between Christmas and New Year for her. And then in March she went on a cruise, so I was there another fortnight after that. My old boss was the manager down there then, and so forth. So yeah, but that was probably about what year would that have been? I was married in 61, probably about about 63, 1963. So they owned it down there then. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about what you used to do, like your role at the
store. Well, when I first started, I was in the docket sorters and then went to the lay-by. But when I went out in the branches, I was responsible for doing all the banking, doing all the adding of the receipts and balancing all the checkouts with their money and so forth, and adding their receipts and that, and banking, and then serving customers at the desk and so all the rest of it there. And I wasn't above putting a few things on the shelves if it was needed. I always remember opening day at Mayfield, there's what they call gondolas, where they had the stock stacked and so forth, and they had each partitioned off with glass. We could hear all this glass breaking, and people were just going on and scooping up the lot and letting the glass drop to the terrazzo or cement floor and break. But they'd go mad, honestly. The sights you'd see.
Well, they basically sold everything.
Everything you could think of. Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed someone that worked at the bakery, and they mentioned there was petrol,
at the main store in Hunter Street, underneath Allura Hall, which was the restaurant up there, there was the service station, and they didn't only sell the one brand of petrol; they sold various brands, so that everybody was happy, sort of thing. They were there underneath that. And where the lay-by office, I used to like that of a Saturday because sometimes they've had a wedding reception at a lower where you had to be out at 12, but it was all set up for the weddings, and sometimes there was a morning wedding and you'd see them come in, the bride and all the rest of it, for their meal. But yeah, so...
Yeah, so from like retail, cosmetics, hairdressing.
Hairdressing, yes, absolutely.
And then
there was hardware,
functions.
Electrical, carpets, furniture, ladies' wear, men's wear. There was everything.
School uniforms.
School uniforms, a lot. Yeah, it was a big place. I got locked in one night. They had the big fire doors, and I had bought material. And of course, when you bought something, it had to stay in the counter, and then through the day it would be shipped out to outside the back where you left, and you'd pick up your parcel there. And I'd bought material to make a skirt. And when I went out the back to get it, it wasn't there. And one of the girls that worked on that department said, "Oh, come on, I'll go back. I know where it is." So we went back, and while we were there, they slid those big doors open. It's closed. And we looked at one another. So she went to the front glass windows of the doors and bashed on the door for the store department, people going past. They had to come back and unlock it for us to get out.
Oh, no.
I didn't fancy it. Would have been all right if you were in the grocery section where you could have got something to eat for the night, but in the dress materials you'd have starved to death.
Exactly, no, you wouldn't get much.
Much there, no, it wouldn't have been very filling there.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. I think, like, you working your way up from like 15 to, and like you were saying, you must have been well supported, and people could probably, your managers could see your ability.
They must have, I think, somewhere on the line. And yet but I always remember when I was learning the lay-by office, Mr. Beattie took me into the office, in his office, and he had this big book, and it had all the different sections that I had to fill in, like the parcels that came in, what the deposits were paid, the balances, and all this sort of thing. And he said to me, "I don't care how many times I explain it to you, but once you tell me you know what you're doing, I do not expect any mistakes." And I would say, "I don't understand this bit," and then he'd go right through it. If they'd have done that at school, I might have enjoyed maths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just shows...
I could do the subtraction and all that, but give me a fraction and a percentage, and boy, I was lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a good teacher.
Yes.
Someone that gives that flexibility up
I
front,
used to think if
right?
only some of the bright ones would say, I don't understand, and they'd do it again, you know, and you'd be sort of cottoned onto it. But
But everyone needs training.
yes,
I think, at the very
absolutely.
beginning.
Well, he was really good, but
Yeah. Sounds as if they had some pretty good structures. In what they would have had to be very organised.
Yes,
and
he was the secretary accountant at the time when I was there, and Mr. Gibbs, Les Gibbs, he was the manager, and I actually went to school with his daughter for the 2 years I went to high school, seeing as I had to repeat sixth class. My mother or the teacher suggested to Mum repeat sixth class, and I'll guarantee she gets to home science high. I couldn't have cared if I went to Wickham or where I went, you know, but so I did, and so as soon as I turned 15, I left, didn't I? End of second year. Didn't go on to get my intermediate or anything else. Oh.
You did extremely well.
I thought I did. I was quite proud of what I'd done, and the fact that they kept. I was remember going shopping one Thursday before Easter, and I had Kevin. He was 2, and I'd gone down to pick Mum up to take her shopping, and while we were there, the manager from Cardiff came up Mum's back stairs, and I thought, well, what's he want? And he said, oh, they've had a catastrophe out at Bullaroo. You need it out there in the office. Apparently, some of the staff were using the money for their own purposes. And so I was out there for a fortnight till they trained new staff. So I was. They offered me the job full time, but I knew by then I was pregnant with my second child, so I didn't go. But I did go out for different other times, a day here and a day there. Nothing to be ready to go shopping or go to do something, and I'd get a phone call. Elaine, can you come in? Because they ended up being. I was there the day that all the casual staff were finished up on the 30th of June 1980, and then it eventually closed down, but all casuals were put off in 1980, and I'd been back there working for 4 years as a cashier, every Thursday night, Saturday morning, and on call through the week when somebody was sick. So
they obviously saw you as a very reliable staff member.
Oh, they might.
All that handling.
Or lost, they need somebody.
But I just think handling all that money.
It was a hell of an amount of money. That was before decimal currency. In those days, it was back when it finished in 80, but in the early stages, it was thousands and thousands of dollars, and I'd have to go over to the bank with somebody to get the money for the wages, pay the wages and all that sort of thing, and do the money up. And Mr. Lehman, who was the head cashier in Newcastle, he used to have to walk to the bank corner to bank the money, and he'd have a big overnight bag, and another fellow would have an overnight bag, and they'd have a gun in their pocket and have the bracelet on their hand to the bag and everything to go.
So was it sort of just on the same block from Hanbury, between Hanbury and that next street?
Next street, yes. There was I think the bank was on the corner, then there was a hotel. And then the store, and then the service station was on the corner.
Well, you were certainly in demand, weren't you, for them to keep
knocking on the door and ringing up and saying, can you come back in? And when I was went back for the last 4 years, a girl that worked there too, she had been working at Mayfield, casual, and she was having a baby, and she said, how about we split it between us, you know? And I said, oh yeah, that'd be okay. So I went back while she was on maternity leave. And anyhow, when it came back for her, and the manager said, no, we'll just deal with you. So she didn't get a job back.
Goodness, you were really there.
I was there,
reliable, trustworthy stuff.
But I did enjoy my days. I did enjoy the store.
Yeah.
There was no effort to go to work.
And it is interesting back then, and I think it might have been as early as late as the mid-70s, that women, once they were married, they couldn't, like you mentioned, return.
The only time you could return is if nobody applied for your job. And I mean, when I was in the office, you'd train the 2 young ones that were there under you to do exactly what you could do so they could do it. And they did it. So that was it. But as I say, I did go back just working casual.
And was that uncommon when you were sort of
I don't know whether the others did that in the shop, but I know they were very kind to people that were in need. A friend, I didn't know her at the time, she had worked at the store in town in the shoe department, and she had 3 children, a 6, a 4 and a 2-year-old, and her husband died. Well, they got straight onto her and employed her out at New Lambton. and she worked there then until later on, a few years later, she remarried. But I don't know whether she could stay there then or whether she gave up then. I don't know. I can't remember. But
yeah, that's sort of.
it was the same with the council. There was a big to-do about the Newcastle Council. There was there was a girl worked at the Mayfield store, and her father was marrying his secretary, and they kept her on. And even though she was married, there was a hell of a to-do about it because she was kept on, and other women had to leave because they got married. Yeah, there was a lot of girls that, well, I hate to say, but there's a lot of passed on now that I didn't get to the age that I am, and but the ones at New Lambton, because that was where I worked last, we still meet up every 3 months or so. We're going to go to Poppy's Garden Centre next in November for our lunch.
Yeah, you've mentioned the wedding receptions, and I'm thinking for the customers, like they could literally buy everything at the store and then get married. And
yes, and put it on their bill and pay it off. Because they had their own credit section, they had their own hire purchase section that you could borrow money and pay for things.
Now you probably talked about one of your experiences being locked in. I was going to ask you a question. What was the funniest experience? Being locked in the store.
Being locked in the store, that was pretty funny. Wasn't funny at the time. I thought we'll be here for the night.
Oh, what made an impression on you?
I think it was just the friendliness of practically everybody. There was no bickering. Well, I never saw anything, they'd be cranky with one another. But I actually found a telegram. I was cleaning out a box. I was looking for something else, and I found a box, and there was a telegram in it when I got married from one of the store people at New Lambton, and he just signed it M4320. That was his store number. Mr. Minto, his name was. Yeah, so I've still got that in there. Actually, I found my old share books and so forth there. You've seen them all, but yeah.
It's amazing people remember their share numbers,
isn't
it?
Yeah.
And the little memberships.
Yes.
I've seen some of the cards.
Yes, they eventually got the metal discs with the full name and address and your store number on it, but it used to be just an oval disc with the M4414 on it. Yeah. And you had to, when you got your divvy, which was 1 and 10 in the pound in those days, you had to leave it there. You couldn't draw that out until you'd got the full shares, which was £10 in those days. You had to add it to, and then after that, once you had £10, well, you could draw the divvy that you above that. Yeah. So.
So you've talked about the other store co-ops in the region, and they were everywhere, weren't
they? They were,
like out the lake.
Yes, there was Swansea and Belmont. I don't think I ever worked at Swansea. I was at Belmont just filling in one day, I think, and there was Charlestown. I did that quite a few times. Wallsend, Cardiff. I never went to West Wallsend. West Wallsend belonged to the Wallsend Plattsburgh, so Wallsend, I think there was one at Edgeworth, and Cardiff and Wallsend were all the different ones, but they were all taken over by the store. I never went out there. But, yeah.
And it would have been important to have stores in the suburbs because not everyone had a car.
No, and another funny thing too, when I was in the docket sorters one day, another girl, Judy Young her name was, and then she married Bob Dunn, who was a fella. We were called on to go out to the bakery and the milk department to put the bundles of tokens in. Milk was in 7s and 14s and 21s and 28s, and the bread was half loaves and so forth. And they took us out in one of the bread trucks sitting on milk crates. Could you imagine that today, sitting in the back of a van on a milk crate, getting taken out to count the thing? Judy never came back. She stayed out in the section out there. She liked it out there, but I went back into town. Yeah. I thought these days, you'd have to be belted in and tied. And they used to have the grocery truck come around. That was they did home deliveries, but there used to be a big truck about the size of a small bus, and they'd come along, and before they'd taken over the store at Cardiff, and they'd come out, I think it was fortnightly, and everybody'd go and get on the bus, and all the groceries were on it. You just picked what you wanted and so forth, and the fella had the cash register at the end, and you'd get your groceries and do it that way.
So what amazes you most about how different the store was compared to shopping today?
Well, I don't think it's as friendly today. I mean, there's staff changes repeatedly at Coles and Woolies and those places. You hardly see the same person on a checkout twice. And whereas it was always, those same girls were always on the checkouts and so forth, and the same in the office, it didn't change around much. I think people like working there and they stayed there.
Yeah.
Good place to work.
That's right.
I used to take home, block your ears, Dylan, a week, 40-hour week, and I used to clear £3, 2 and 6, which was $6.25 a week. You wouldn't get out of bed for that, would you?
No.
Yeah, that's what I used to bring home. Mum used to take 10 shillings for board a week. Yeah, and if I wanted to buy anything, she'd usually buy it and I'd pay her off. An overcoat I remember buying, and she paid for it and then I'd pay it back to her.
Yeah.
I know we used to go down the biscuit counter. Like they were all counters in those days. It wasn't like supermarkets. And we'd go down at morning tea and we'd get 10 minutes for morning tea. We'd rush down to the biscuit counter and get chocolate biscuits. Were only available in the summertime because they used to melt in the wintertime in the shops. You couldn't buy chocolate coated biscuits in the summer. And we'd get a shilling's worth of chocolate biscuits, a mint slice or something like that. I think the girls would give you a couple of extra, but yeah, that was morning tea. And we'd get 10 minutes each day shopping time. Yeah, you could have 10 minutes to shop.
So what do you miss? Oh, this relates to the question I just asked, but yeah, what do you miss about like those old days in terms of shopping?
Yeah, just the friendship and the helping. Like, I mean, 9 times out of 10, if you go to some of the shops, you've got to look around for somebody that can help you with an article that you want to buy to see if they've got another size or anything like that. So they're not as much on the floor as what they used to be at the good old store. I mean, the counters were always full of staff and helpful. Yeah.
So many people have answered that question exactly how you have.
Yeah.
I just think again, it just shows like just how social and supportive and caring
it was.
the organisation was.
Yeah, and then we now at Mayfield, we used to have a night. We'd subscribe to it, put so much in, and then we'd have a night out and have dinner somewhere and so forth. And I think we had it at Allura Hall the one night because it was my 18th birthday, and I know I've got photos taken for my 18th birthday in there. Yes. It was nothing to see people come in twice a day. They'd be there in the morning, again in the afternoon, after they'd pick the kids up from school, and they'd call in at the store, for something. But
quite amazing, isn't it? So it must have been.
And you got to know the people. You could call them by name, and a lot of the store numbers would stay in your mind that you knew who they were and so forth. Ask about their families. Yeah.
So in a sense, like, it was really there for the community.
Yes, absolutely.
The community were its members and the shareholders.
Yes, absolutely.
Why do you think the store did eventually close down? Like, is there any sort of particular factor that you would consider?
I think it was just, Dylan, that the young ones wanted their rebate at the time when they bought their, furniture and stuff like that. They wanted a discount off it, and that's what a lot of the discount stores were doing. You'd go in for furniture and they'd tell you the price and they'd say, but we can give you a discount on that, and they'd want that there and then instead of letting it mount up and doing it that way, sort of thing. Yeah. But I think that was the demise of it. And it got taken over by a lot of new people. The older managers left, and they were the new gung-ho ones that came in and wanted to alter it all, and I think that was what ruined it in the end. But,
so what do you think one of the lasting legacies of the store?
I don't know, just it was just such a well-run business, and I think anybody that worked there benefited by having worked there at the store and learning right from the grassroots up sort of thing. It was just a good place to work, and they had all their service stations and so forth. Cardiff used to have a service station down there that was the store. Most of them did. Most of the branches did have that, but it was lasting friendships.
Like, is there anything you wish was still there?
I wish the store was still there. I wish it was still going. Yeah, and there was such a lot of people worked there that even like my sister worked there. The 2 girls across the road here worked there. There was lots of local people worked in at the store, and I still see those. the girls, but it was really a really friendly. I found really friendly place, and we sort of all used to spend lunch together and go over and sit in Burwood Park before the road went through it and sit there and have lunch if it was a nice day and things like that. Of course, you got an hour for lunch. But nowadays, a lot of people only get half an hour, I think, for lunch breaks usually. But it was an hour for lunch.
Well, Elaine, thank you so much for sharing your stories and reminiscing about the store.
I love it. I really do. Good old store.